everyone. We will give a couple of minutes for everybody to get in. So please welcome. Happy New Year for everybody.
I love this perspective of Julitza, sort of upside down almost.
Oh no, let me see. Now? Good?
That's also fine.
Now I'm not upside down.
No, you're perfect now.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so let's kick. Welcome everyone to the IFOAM Organics International first webinar of the year, which happens to be one of the most requested topics of our members and network. This webinar, we will be focusing on the truth about organic. We will touch on the more persistent, more critical myth about organic. Is organic a market employed? Is organic expensive? Is truly healthy? Is truly helping the environment? So we are very lucky to have a great assembled lineup for us today of speakers, experts, truly that have been working for a long time in debunking, in creating consumers awareness, people's awareness. So I'm very pleased to be moderating this session. I'm Julitza Lernoud. I'm part of the World Board of IFOAM Organics International. I come from Argentina, and I'm very pleased to be here today. So before we start, you can find instructions in the chat box, and I would like to invite you to go to this QR code. You can scan it with your phone and enter the following code is on the screen, but I can give it to you, is 2678. 9430, and you will get a question. And the question would be, what comes to your mind when you think of organic in one word? So we will try to keep it as short as possible, that you please put your input, what comes to mind when you think about organic. So then we get a feeling of your thoughts. And while you fill that up, I will have the honor to present our panel that I'm very, very, very honored to be moderating and a bit intimidated as well. So bear with me. Now, first of all, thank you very much. We have Volkert Engelsman. He's one of Europe's pioneer in organic food systems. He has founded EOSTA, a company that helped reshape organic agriculture, sustainability, transparency, not only within the organic European market, but across the world. He also worked and founded Soil and More, that was the first initiative to truly track the impact of organic agriculture on soil health, on climate resilience, on health, on the humans, etc., etc. And today he doesn't stop the fight, and he has founded the Robin Food Coalition that brings over 70 organic small and medium enterprises to demonstrate that organic agriculture is not only value-driven, but is also innovative, scalable, and economically valuable. So there we are already debunking a lot of myths with only Volkert's trajectory. Second, we will have also Harun Cicek. He's the deputy leader of the group of agroecological systems innovation and adoption at FiBL, the Research Institute for Organic Agriculture in Switzerland, one of the biggest research institutes on organic agriculture worldwide. His work focused on dry lands on organic agriculture, addressing one of the very persistent myths on organic, that is the performance and its resilience, water scare, and climate stress conditions. So Harun is truly an expert on the situation we are having now, also how organic is developing through the climate emergency we are facing. He is also actively involved in the Knowledge Center for Organic Agriculture and Agroecology in Africa, and in the Transforming the Mediterranean Region through agroforestry systems initiatives. And there he works to create an interface and closer relation between farmers, researchers, and the general public. And finally, but no less, we have Julitza Nieves. She's from Puerto Rico. Buen día, Julitza. She works directly on another very important myth about organic and agroecology, that is that it can't really be scaled up, that it can't feed the world, that it can't be accessible. She is the Central American and Caribbean convener for INOFO, that is the global network for farmers' organic organizations under IFOAM Organics International, where she supports smallholder farmers and strengthens agroecological practices across the region. Julitza is also part of La Alianza por la Agricultura, an initiative working to transform how agriculture is practiced in Puerto Rico, placing farmers' communities at its core. So thank you for having you all. I hope I was fair in the introductions. And so to continue with our day, I would like to ask Nika to maybe show us the result. Sorry, I was missing a very important part of the day, that is how we should behave and the house rules a little bit, so we are all on the same page. So I will read this so I don't make a mess. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted on YouTube and on our website, so you can rewatch it. We will invite you strongly to rewatch it, and also because you might have questions afterwards. And you can, of course, please share it around among your network. There will be a Q&A section at the end, but as well you have a Q&A bottom at the Zoom screen, and we will answer as many questions throughout the webinar, but as well at the Q&A section at the end of this webinar. Please keep the questions clear and concise. Also, if you are asking on a specific myth, we will appreciate if you say myth and this is the question, so we make sure we address it correctly. There's also the ability, if someone doesn't speak English or is missing some parts, the closed captions are available in different language. Please go at the end of your screen, and there you will see a logo where you can activate it and select the language. Of course, as always, with the organic principles of fairness, health and care and ecology, let's keep things respectful and constructive. That's the organic spirit. And please note that the views and opinions shared by the speakers are their own and not necessarily reflecting IFOAM Organics International. So let's, I now handle to Nikita to show us. Nika, please, if you can show us the cloud. So healthy, sustainability, clean, ecology, nature, natural, many synonyms. I would like to now open the floor also to our speakers, Volkert, Julitza, Harun. How you feel about this? Certification comes quite big as equality or biodiversity. So it's interesting to see those kind of health and healthy and sustainability clearly on top, but still there are some also luxury I see there. So maybe I open the floor for a couple of minutes before we kick with the myth. Volker, you want to be brave enough to open a first statement on our audience thoughts on organic?
Well, thank you very much, dear friends, to sharing this cloud, and it is not surprising at all. I mean, ecosystems are collapsing, and organic clearly shows the way. It is the navigation to future-proof tomorrow's food and farming systems, and that clearly comes through this word cloud. So thank you very much for sharing.
Thank you, Volker. Harun, Julitza, any thoughts? If you don't have, we can go ahead and start, and we can come back later again before we start the Q&A. We can revisit and see how we feel as well of all these words after we debunk it, some myth. Sounds good? So maybe we can jump directly into our webinar today, and we will start with the first myth, that is organic is a marketing ploy. And for that, we have Volker that will bring us some light into this and maybe some more confusion or maybe new ways of perceiving what we say when we are saying marketing, when we use these wordings that sometimes we see as enemy, but can be allies used well. So, Volker, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Well summarized, dear Julia. But first, a big compliment for you and your team. I think the global organic movement considers Julia our Jeanne d'Arc of the organic movement globally, who has been serving the future of farming in general for many, many years. So thank you very much for hosting this event. Then to the first myth. Is organic a marketing ploy? I would say yes, it is. Actually, it is a bloody good marketing unique selling point because ecosystems are collapsing. We're blasting through our planetary boundaries, falling through our social foundations, and food-related health issues are exploding through the roof. So whilst there can be many other regenerative claims, nature inclusive, climate resilient claims, which are all undoubtedly important, I think we're operating in a Wild West market with a lot of serious claims that are backed up by serious measures, but also a lot of greenwashing claims that actually confuse the consumer. So if you need a safe haven that can navigate the food and farming global community towards tomorrow's reality, then it is organic farming, simply because it is anchored in clear legislation, which also popped up, as you well noted, Julia, in the word cloud. And we seem to be getting a lot of tailwind from farmers globally and also consumers, food supply chains, the financial sector, NGOs, and the public sector for this new reality that is reflected in increasing disruptions, supply chain disruptions, weather extremes, climate change, soil depletion. We're losing the equivalent of 30 soccer fields of fertile soil per minute, accumulating to 12 million hectares a year, according to the FAO. We're polluting our waters, we're killing our biodiversity, and these are precisely the values that organic farmers contribute to building soil fertility, contributing to clean water, investing in biodiversity as also a means to make your crops more pest and disease resilient, and organic farmers mitigate climate change by sequestering carbon in soil organic matter. And last but not least, they're contributing to healthy food that doesn't pollute our bodies. This is backed up by a recent study we conducted together with Deloitte, one of the mainstream financial auditors, who calculated that if we would convert Dutch farming to 100% organic with a bit of innovation and a bit of a protein transition, then the Dutch taxpayer would save 10 billion euros per year. So even hard-nosed tax reduction advocates are clearly in favor of organic farmers. We created a coalition of the willing together with the Ministry of Defense. Not that the Dutch defense forces are very impressive, but we recently sent two military people to Greenland, not to be underestimated. We flew them back in the meantime because Trump didn't like it. He was so scared of the Dutch army. But I'm getting off track here. So I think if you sort of depolarize between green or gray farming, if you calculate properly, you clearly see that organic is not too expensive, but conventional is too cheap, because we reap the short-term profits of our food system whilst externalizing the societal costs to future generations and the taxpayer. And the second study we recently conducted is with PwC and a couple of banks that demonstrate that this study demonstrates that if you want to really de-risk your supply chain and contribute to food stability and food safety, then it makes sense to invest in organic. Because whilst on the one side people claim that organic can't feed the world because more extensive, I mean, that can be easily countered by saying that's not the point, extensive farming. The point is the protein transition, as long as we use 80% of our agricultural fields for animal feed, that's where the homework is. But there's an additional argument that if you look at conventional supply chains, they may yield a little bit more per hectare on the short term, but they're undermining their ability to be productive in future, which is where organic farmers outperform also in the long run conventional farmers and actually demonstrate that, yes, organic is the way to feed the world. So finally, not just consumers, not just farmers. If you want a unique selling point, and if you really want to push your marketing team, go for organic. This is how you future-proof your company.
Thank you, Volker. I think it's a great opening for the next myth. And I like that actually without one thing, you really debunked the myth and turned it around. And actually now the myth is that industrial agribusiness is actually good. That is the myth you just debunked. And I love that because it's not true that they are better. Actually, organic is better. The ploy is theirs, and their language and propaganda has changed the things around. So thank you, Volker. And that really gives me the opening for inviting Julitza to continue with this on our second myth, that is organic is expensive and not accessible. So who better to talk about this than a farmer's voice? So Julitza, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Hey. Hello, thank you. First of all, Volker, I'm very amazed of your opponents, and I really admire all the work that the Netherlands do. Like, we always look to Netherlands because of being an island. So we have like all the problems and impacts of climate change here more strong. I think it's very important when we say that it's more expensive and not accessible to think about like different layers on how economy works. And I really think with ecosystems collapsing, the answers for feeding people come into community levels. So when we say organic is more expensive, I don't know if you know, but Puerto Rico is a colony of the US. So most of the data that I have is from the US. So actually on retail, as soon as January 2025, US Department of Agriculture said that organic is 52% more expensive than conventional food. But then when we start thinking about it, at least for me, 20 years ago, I was inspired of becoming a farmer because I wanted clean food for myself and my family. And yes, it was expensive and it was not accessible, but it came with a lack of knowledge from myself of acknowledging and also getting to know what grows local in my zone. So I started going to rural markets and found that there were so many crops that they were just forgotten. And so I began in a process of knowing how to work with them, knowing how to process them, and learning more about that. So that way, it kind of like went the opposite. So it was not expensive. Actually, it was the opposite. But if we stay in a globalized diet where we want to eat the same things out of season, then yes, it's going to be more expensive and also more difficult for the environment and for the market to sustain it. Here in Puerto Rico, like the season to grow rich vegetables is very short. So right now you can get like all these type of vegetables that we were thought that were really good for us, and which they are, like broccoli, carrots, all these leaves, like delicate leaves. But it's not sustainable to get it the rest of the year. And that's something that it's makes it more expensive and not accessible. Also, I would like to point the fact that at least in the US, 97% of all the farms are family owned. Obviously, this is not thinking on amount of land. Like if we think of amount of land, just 3% have all the land. But when we see so many people producing food in small scales to feed their families and to feed their communities, then that's the base of society that needs to be strengthened. And that's the base of society that keeps things going. It's not the big companies. I mean, the big companies, you see them in the supermarkets. So people that live in the city, they have to rely on that. But it's very interesting how the paradigm has been changing through time, where now you see urban markets, you see urban farming everywhere, and more community getting together for around food, which is a basic necessity. So I actually encourage everybody to little time they have invested getting to know their neighbors and helping in food production anytime, any type they can. One thing that I found by traveling in Central America and South America is that old people, they do organic all their life. That's the way it was done before you were able to buy something to kill something. So it's very interesting how you go to several farmers markets everywhere in the world, and it's actually either less expensive or the same price or cheaper than regular. But that's, again, that's usually not in statistics because it's community based. So it's as fast as somebody grew some tomatoes in their yard, they took it to the farmer's market, sold it to the neighbor, and that's it, gone. So I think we have to, it's really good that we have statistics and we have a way to measure how, yes, organic can be more expensive. Yes, it can be more accessible in certain areas where places are more globalized. There's more people from other countries coming in and then like demanding it because that's how economy moves. But if you go into community, that's not true. It's not more expensive and it's really, really accessible. But you cannot be in the surface of life. You need to go deep.
Thank you, Julitza. And I think you brought very important issues that if we are talking about what we buy and why it's expensive or not, is to understand also what is regional, what is seasonal, what are we eating, because humanity has reduced its diet to a handful of variety of products, and we are not taking advantage of its full diversity of this planet, and also by that risking the biodiversity and encouraging production that actually harms our soils, our health. And these of the short value change, when you reach local markets, even it can be cheaper. And it doesn't mean that it doesn't cover cost for farmers. It's actually the most fair trades we have seen, where farmers actually are covering their costs and produce reach consumers in a fair and accessible way. So this actually brings and opens very well the floor for the next myth that will be tackled by Volkert, because we also need to quantify costs on health. So the other myth we come now is that organic products have no proven impact on health. And this also has an economic part that we don't count when we say organic is more expensive. We don't count this good input that we are having and saving money at the same time. So, but I will shut up and I will give the floor to Volker to tackle this one.
Well, thank you, Julia and Julitza, for sharing your views and summarizing this point, Julia. There are two reasons to use the health argument. One is consumers generally consider organic food healthier because of lack of pesticides. And on the other side, you have the scientific community and the watchdogs, the authorities, who say you can talk about health, soil health, contribution to biodiversity or ecosystems, maybe organic can contribute something. Actually, everybody is quite in agreement that organic is a good thing. But don't talk about health, don't you dare. That seems to be some strange sacred place which you can't do health claims, certainly not as a commercial company. Don't do it. That is the advice. That's why we decided as a company to talk about health. And we asked EY to conduct a study, who then applied the DALI calculation applied by the FAO, the Disability Adjusted Life Year calculation, that monetizes the health KPIs. And we used the database supplied by EFSA, the European Food Safety Agency, because they keep a record of all the residue issues with food. And whilst on the one side they say if there's a little bit of residues, that's okay, because farmers need that. But too much is not good for health. So they keep a track record of where the maximum residue limits are broken. And they also do that for organic. So if you feed these data into the DALI calculation, they, for instance, calculated that organic apples are 19 cents per kilo healthier than conventional apples. So whilst scientists seem to be struggling with this, although there are some very good studies, the financial sector seems to be totally clear about the fact that organic is healthier because less toxic. So I can only encourage everybody to emphasize organic as the entry point to trigger consumer interest. If you want to persuade consumers by talking about the bees and the flowers, they say that is very important, but then life carries on until you talk about their own health. So we recently, and that's my final point, therefore introduced the National Piss Observer, which was a consumer test, that we spread out in tens of thousands. So you pee in a little bottle, and then we, or our labs, conclude how much glyphosate is in your urine. And if people are shocked, and most of the people are shocked because we got glyphosate, Roundup, in our system, in our urine, all of us, then we recommended everybody to eat organic for a while. And then this glyphosate disappears, or is at least dramatically reduced. This had a tremendous impact because people thought, well, hang on a minute, even if scientists claim, and by Monsanto at first, of course, that glyphosate is perfectly healthy for you. Okay, we reserve 11 billion to settle cancer court cases, and there's no relationship whatsoever with Parkinson either. But in the meantime, they're already almost going bankrupt because of all these settlements. So whilst the commercial sector is fighting, and trying to get the scientific sector on their side that pesticides are necessary and not that toxic, financial analysis and true cost accounting practices clearly demonstrate the opposite. So I clearly recommend everybody to talk to consumers about health, about pesticides, because that's your entry point through which you can then talk about the other benefits related to soil health, biodiversity, and clean water. Thank you.
Thank you, Volker. I think you brought also very important issues that is, for example, first, that industrial agriculture, GMOs and Roundup haven't delivered. They have promised all these health securities, these production yields, these things. And as a system, this opens also to now our next speaker, Harun, will tackle this. But there's a lot of promises from the industry agriculture that they haven't delivered. They are not taken into account, or they are not taken into court, or they save some money, as you say, to handle it on a side. And we are always being asked if we are truly healthier or not. And we have the data, and we have proven data. And as you say, is people unfortunately don't care so much about the butterfly because it's not so imminent, but when there's a risk of their own or their own family, there things shake. I think Julitza wants to add something. Please go ahead.
Yes, I just want to add that when we are talking about traces of pesticides and artificial inputs in food, it's kind of difficult to measure it in toxicology levels. So sometimes in our bodies, we can see the effect maybe in 40 years. So then when we see that effect, it's very hard to go to the root of it. So like, for example, what Volkert was saying about Parkinson is a disease that develops throughout many, many years of the person. And usually people go to the doctor when the symptoms are uncontrollable. So when we say that healthier, like if we start seeing ourselves as the ecosystems, so what effects does it have to have cleaner water, cleaner air, cleaner soil? Obviously, positive effect in ourselves. I mean, you don't have to have a PhD to get into that conclusion. That's all I wanted to add. It's very difficult to measure it, and I think companies take advantage of that. I don't know if they do it on purpose or not, but they take advantage in the traces. So yeah, that's all.
Thank you, Julitza. You want to add something, Volker, on that?
No, perfect.
No.
Perfect. Thank you.
No, thank you, Julitza. And I think also you added that we in the organic sector, we are very cautious when we talk about health and organic impact on health. Well, the other sector are very wild and open and make all these claims without the support and the papers and the research behind. So, but also when we say something, it's based on data. And that's why I want to invite our next speaker, that is Harun, and we will switch from health on our bodies to health on our planet and our environment. So there is this constant myth that organic is not actually better for the environment, especially when you take it up to larger scales. And this connects quickly, and I think Harun will tackle both myths. That is the other myth, that organic cannot truly feed the world because it steals, because it has so many challenges, because it's so expensive, so many factors that we have been talking so far. And so Harun will bring some light into this. Again, he will come with more scientific data that will enlighten us. Harun, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Julia. So yeah, I'm gonna start with, let's say, from the yield perspective, because this is really the core of the matter. Many people discuss that, and then we discuss also environment. But to me, environment is very clear. Like, I mean, there's not really so much, even in the scientific community, that there's an agreement that environmentally organic is much better, right? But the yield is a different story. There's not really clear agreement. And then usually the argument is against organic, right? So we can go to the next slide. So first of all, the question, the way it's framed, unfortunately, it's an industry narrative, feeding the world narrative, right? So this is an IPES report that you can see. One of the key lock-ins, they call it, industrial agriculture, is this feed the world narrative. There are a lot of other issues here. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to talk about all these. Like export orientation, expectation of cheap food that we discussed recently, And the feed the world narrative is actually the key of the matter for this yield issue. And unfortunately, we have a lot of data actually showing that there is no really urgency of feeding the world, right? We can go to the next slide. So because we have data on, how much we produce, how much calories is needed. So there is actually no issue with that. There are a lot of papers on this. The people who are attending right now, they can search easily now. There's AI and every other source. They can find, they can check whether we produce enough based on the calorie needs of the people, right? So there's no really issue with that. So I think, first of all, we need to really dismantle that expectation and urgency and let's say scare that we need to feed the world, right? There is no really urgency with that. That doesn't mean that we can produce less. That's not the point. We can go to the next slide. But at the same time, I mean, if let's say there was an urgency, even the conventional yields are not actually increasing, because based on this argument, the conventional side has been telling us that through genetic modification, through synthetic inputs, they will increase the yields, they will solve the global hunger. But this is not happening actually. Last 3 decades, we've been seeing that there is a stagnation since 1990s actually, that yields are not increasing anymore in most of the world, right? And this is really concerning for them especially, right? But they're not able to find the solution. And Volkert already mentioned that actually that yields are actually that conventional agriculture inherently actually damages the soil and environment. So actually their yields are supposed to go down, unlike organic, right? So next slide, please. So I'm going to talk about 2 different projects here as an example, but the underlying thing here is that like what the scientific community relies on is basically long-term studies comparing conventional and organic, right? So they set up these long-term studies in all over the world. Like I worked in Canada and the United States. There are several of them. One of the longest ones in Switzerland, DOC trial, you may know. And then in the global south, we have this now. What I'm going to talk about, SISCOM trials in Bolivia, in Kenya, right? So we have actually a lot of examples, but today I'm going to focus on global south, not the developed countries, because this is maybe more relevant for the audience today here. But what happens in these studies is that I think they started around 80s, 90s with the simple rotations, but because of the scientific requirement that you need to compare the same things, basically they were not really comparing systems. Let's say, the conventional system, let's say very in a basic way, that you have the wheat with certain input, then you need to have the wheat rotation in the organic too, but just replacing the synthetic input with the manure, let's say, right? And this is not really organic system, but because of the requirement that this is the only way to publish, right? The initial comparison studies had actually very simple, non-realistic, non-representative rotations and inputs for the organic, right? So this is really a huge problem because you're not really comparing conventional to organic, because the conventional is getting the best treatment, but organic is trying to imitate the conventional with the least innovative approach, right? So this is really problematic. And then this went on like almost 2 decades, 90s to early 2000s, right? Until like 2015, let's say. And then the people start realizing that organic is not performing, and all the knowledge that we have now basically saying that organic yields like 20, 30% less. This comes from these studies, because we've seen that it was really yielding less. And then scientists starting to realize that, well, this is not really organic system. And when you say scientists, it's not about scientific thinking, it's about the publication. This publication thing is really important, because whenever you do any work, if you don't publish that, that's not a scientific study anymore, right? You can say whatever you want about it, whatever observations, but as long as it's not published, it's not scientific work. It's not scientific work. So that was the pressure on the scientists. But now, thankfully that many of the editors of these journals, they've started to realize that you can actually compare systems. It doesn't have to have exactly same treatment. And this was a really painful process. That was huge arguments, huge discussions, many rejections of the studies, right? And this actually paved the way for some of the scientists to change their rotations. We can go to the next slide. So like you can see here, there are, for example, this particular one from Kenya, that you have 3 colors, and 3 colors actually represent 3 different rotational cycles, right? Because they constantly change things. If you can look at the last one, which our colleagues basically think that this is the the good rotation now, and immediately organics yields started to catch up with the conventional yields, right? So they're actually in this rotation, it has potato, very high nutrient requiring crops like potato, beans, right? And then you have wheat, right? The maize, right? Sorry, maize, not wheat. So you actually have similar yields in organic high input systems and the conventional high input systems. So this is very interesting. This just little tweaking actually get the organics already up to the level of the conventional, right? And this is not even ideal rotation. Like yesterday we were talking about with my colleagues, actually this organic rotation can be even further improved to yield even much, much better. But for the sake of scientific consistency, we keep it like this, right? So this is very important because, as I said, conventional got stuck at some level, but organic didn't even realize its potential yet. This is really amazing, right? So we've been talking about this. Like we've been saying that, last 30 years, saying that, oh, there's not enough investment on organic. It was a theory that time, but now we start seeing it. We're like, oh, little tweaking already got us at the same level. What if you actually, add livestock, at cover crops and all that, right? What's going to happen? It's going to really shoot up. We can actually exceed the conventional system. Next slide, please. Yeah. So yeah, you can just see it here. Like this is basically average grain yield, organic high and conventional high, exactly the same yield, right? So there's no difference. And this is, again, this is not even an ideal rotation for organic. Yeah, next slide, please. So another one is from Bolivia. That was from Kenya. And this is this is agroforestry experiment based on cocoa, right? Next slide, please. I'm sorry, I cannot really spend too much time on the slides, but here you see the similar story. So like when you diversify the system, total system yields really start yielding better than the monoculture, right? So of course, another issue here is that, again, because we don't design ideal organic rotations yet. For example, there is such a thing as organic monoculture, but by organic principles, they should never be organic monoculture, right? Like how can there be a organic monoculture? This is completely against the organic principles, right? But for the sake of scientific, consistency, so we have to have this kind of systems. So when you look at the cocoa here, for example, yes, cocoa yields are less in the diverse systems where cocoa is not the main crop. But if you go to the next slide, you will see that if you actually start diversifying the system, the total the yield of the diverse systems are actually much better than the monocultures, right? And then when you add actually other crops like banana and others, then you actually have conventional agroforestry and organic agroforestry yield the same. This is very interesting here because when you diversify system, you actually conventional also becomes like almost like organic because you reduce it reduces the needs for pesticides and herbicides and also other inputs like synthetic fertilizers. So it's very interesting that this feeds the families, this feeds the communities, right? This doesn't feed let's say rich countries only in cocoa, but this actually feeds this kind of systems, feeds the local communities and then nutritionally, not only calorie wise too. Yeah, okay, next slide, please. So now I'm going to talk about another project, Sustain Cell, from dry areas of West Africa. So these areas are basically very interesting areas because they really have true agroforestry. Because what I talked about agroforestry before this was mainly tree-based agroforestry, where basically products are coming from the trees. But here we're talking about agroforestry that actually crops, trees, tree products, and animals are together. And right, so this is very rare. And unfortunately, because of colonization, the West Africans got away from this complex system and started basically producing crops just like the colonialists taught them, like just basically with no diversity of monocultures, and their yields were really suffering. Next slide, please. Here, I'm not going to talk about this, but this, again, the West African context, of course, has its own challenges, but I'm going to skip this. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is an example, for example, just using local resources as a fertility sources. Like, for example, you have these naturally appearing shrubs or even exotic shrubs that is introduced. If you use them, what happens, like if you use them as a mulch, as a fertility source, what happens compared to, for example, no input or fertilizer input? Or, you know, if you make basically some of the shrubs, these Gira, Gilicidia, Piliostigma, don't worry about the names. These are all names of the different shrub species. We basically tested all of them, right? And basically, what you see here is that when you put these exotic or local shrubs, you can reach the yield similar to fertilizer treatment. So this is a huge thing because basically full fertilizer treatment represents conventional agriculture. The other ones represent organic, right? And of course, you know, then when you do this, you increase the organic matter, you increase porosity, you improve bulk density, right? You actually build up your soil, and these soils are extremely degraded, right? So these are very new. What I presented so far, they're all very new. Actually, some of them are published, some of them are not published yet. So very new information, and this is really promising because here what we show is basically that using local resources, not depending on external inputs, that we can actually produce as much or more than even sometimes than the full fertilizer treatments, especially under very difficult years like the drought years. Yeah, next slide, please. Yeah, here, not only again, because we need to look at the system, when we start using these local resources, that we can actually improve animal production too, similar shrubs or trees, or we can actually improve animal health too, right? So when we talk about organic, it's not about only, you know, comparing yields of, you know, some crops. Actually, when you diversify your system, you actually increase total systems productivity. This is a very important point. Yeah, next point, please. And then here also that, you know, usually what we see in the conventional sense that the crops and trees are always seen as a competitors, right? But here, what we found, for example, that you can have almost up to 1,000. This is, imagine, like 1,000 shrubs per hectare, and then still have better yield, sorghum yield, or cowpea yield. For cowpea, actually, even you can go to up to 2,000 sometimes, right? This is really something that is not imaginable. Like we conventionally, we're not used to that. We always want to separate things. We always imagine that things compete in nature, right? But organic systems like this show that no, there are actually very good interactions between species, shrubs, or trees or crops, right? This is very counterintuitive, but we've seen this in several actually sites. So as I said, going back to the beginning, what I was saying, that there is huge potential in organic that we have not explored yet, and the things are just coming out. Yeah. Next slide, please. Yeah, these are just the pictures. For example, the top left corner is that this is the 2,000 per hectare. These little bunches are basically shrubs, and then among them is sorghum, right? And the wet season and the dry season, you see it. Yeah, next slide, please. Yeah, so this is also showing that this is farmer perception of you know, how their yields increase. You have this shrub integration or maintenance in the first one. So when they did that, this was the first thing they did, and that the yields increased almost like 60%, right, average. And then mulching, also using this, like maintenance means basically that you keep the shrubs and trees inside the field versus, you know, mulching, which is like coming from outside of the field, right? Okay, we can go to the next one. Probably I'm running out of time. But I just want to mention this for the environment.
Don't worry, don't rush. It's
okay.
important that you explain it well. Thank you.
Okay. So like this nitrogen, because this now we're getting into a little bit on the environment too. I'm not going to spend too much time, but just for people to understand what synthetic fertilizers mean, you can just click on the slides because there are several pictures that, yeah, okay. So, you know, as most of you probably know that nitrogen fertilizers are basically mainly nitrogen, right? Other things, but mainly nitrogen, the most expensive one is at least that we capture the nitrogen from the air, right? And to break that triple N bond, you need so much energy, right? This is and this graph shows basically the energy requirement that we needed over the years. Now we're around like 50 kilojoule. This is a huge amount of energy. So just to put it in a context for you, the environmental impact of these fertilizers, right? To grow enough wheat on one soccer field size plot, just 1 hectare, let's say, and you need to apply 150 kilogram of nitrogen fertilizer on that, right? This is like 1 hectare wheat, right? So the making that fertilizer, just making that fertilizer, you need 150 liters of gasoline, or which means basically 1 barrel, or enough electricity power your home for 2 months. Imagine how much energy is that, right? So, I mean, we don't even have to discuss the environmental impact of really conventional agriculture. Okay, next slide, please. So we have a lot of papers. You can find them. I think there is no really issue with how organic is really increasing the organic matter of the soil across the continents, across the trials. So there are not really, let's say, disagreements on this. Next slide. I think I'm almost done anyway. And we started looking into this pesticide residues. Again, this is also environmental impact, right? So this is, of course, a huge amount of pesticide residues on, for example, this is for cabbage, right? And recommended, if there is any such a thing as recommended, but it's 100. So you can see this is like 200, and this is basically not even farmer managed. This is really controlled, scientifically managed trial that is still, that showing that it's huge actually amount of pesticides are left on the produce, and this I cannot even say it, but this imidacloprid is actually banned in Europe, right? So this is from Kenya. So again, you can judge yourself, what the situation is. Next slide. I think I'm done, right? Yeah. So this is the Syscom contact. And then the next slide shows the sustained cell contact. So if you need more information, you can go to these websites and find them. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Harun. I know it's a lot of data and information, but I think you went very clearly through it. And for our audience, please rest assured that it will be available tomorrow, so you can revisit it again and you can contact us for clarifying questions. Anyway, we will jump afterwards to the Q&A. But it's really interesting this that you brought, that we also need to think how we measure science, how we do scientific thinking within the organic farming system, because it's a different system. So we need to understand all these different add-ons and how they impact the final yield, the final soil health or quality or nutritious, etc. So it's interesting that you manage within the community to rethink it and say, okay, no, we have to shift and stop perpetuating this known system of measuring and rethinking and measure what we are actually doing and the true impact of the whole system, not only vague indicators around and around. So, and the importance of a good management and thinking of the farm as a whole system, and not individual crops or individual plots, and that there are ecosystems we have the fungus system, we have so many interactions and communications that we are difficult to measure. Before we jump to the last myth that Julitza will clarify, if any of the speakers wants to jump in, or Harun, you want to add something else? So then we go to the final but not least myth that actually builds very well on this, that there is no global consensus on what organic is or what organic means, or what do we say when we talk about organic, depending on the country, maybe ecological or maybe natural, it might change, it might define. So Julitza, please, the floor is yours.
Okay. First of all, I think every time I go to an international meeting where, like, for example, slow food meetings, where it's people from all over the world and we're all into organic production, yes, there is a consensus. Definitely. Everybody that is related, producers, consumers, like serious consumers, family related to this type of food, I can totally say, yes, there is a consensus. I think the consensus ends where we have companies doing greenwashing, where you start manipulating the wording, and that's very effective for them. So you can say, well, it's not organic, so we're going to put in the label that it's clean. And we're going to say that we are using some pesticides at the beginning, but then at the, 50 days before the harvest, we're not using any. And you put it in very tiny letters. So you really have to take time, which almost nobody has, to read this. Some things that I've seen, I run a farmers market, so we have a lot of people wanting to join the market. And people that are into organic farming, I could say they are like I don't want to say a type of person, but you see that they are pretty truthful. So, we love the earth, we love this life, we love being alive. So we take care of everything. And that's how we live. So you can sense that in someone. But then when people come and they're like, oh, these people are making money, so I want to join, then you start seeing, and you start when you visit the farms, you start seeing like very weird things about, like having, oh, I'm mixing conventional agriculture with organic agriculture, and then uphill I'm using conventional, and downhill I'm doing organic, which doesn't make any sense because of the runoff. So things like that. So I think that's it's very important that farmers associations start getting together, talking about that, and just wait for the right moment so we can all have like a harmonized standard on world organics. I think that's the way to go, because big companies, conventional companies that are starting to enter the organic movement, they're all about manipulating the words. And I think the people that do it for real, like, we need to keep strong and make our communities stronger. That's like the real base. And then when it's the time, thankful to all these organizations that are doing all this research and can actually demonstrate. But right now, I think it's just like a Wild West market. So while the Wild West market is going on, like, we keep working hard, and we keep with our example demonstrating that, yes, we have a consensus. Yes, we are working towards the same goals of providing clean food for all of our communities. And if we can grow bigger, we'll grow bigger together. But I would say there is a consensus, but we have to be very careful with the manipulation of the words.
Thank you, Julitza. I think you brought a lot of important issues, and I want to also invite our audience to visit, because there's also a global consensus on the IFOAM norm. IFOAM is the global umbrella organization for the organic movement. We are over 50 years old, and we are a grassroots organization with farmers like Julitza, with researchers like Harun, like, I don't know what title to put you, Volker, because you had so many different careers and specialties, but we gather so many different people within the movement, and all those people develop together the IFOAM norms and the IFOAM, the organic principles, the principle of ecology, of fairness, of care, and of health. And those are the global consensus of what we mean organic is. Then comes the laws, and then countries or regions like the EU develop their own regulations, adapting it also to their own cultures and their realities and market needs. And then we also have private labels. But at its core, we still have the IFOAM norm, we have the IFOAM principles that unite us all as a sector. And I think I will invite all the audience to go and visit them. They are always, it's a live thing, because our members, we are keep on learning, as Harun just said. We keep on evolving. Organic is about keep evolving and learning and innovation. So also the norms keep on learning, and that is with the whole organic community. I think we are closing the myth part, and before opening to the questions that are coming from the audience, that we have a lot of questions, I wanted to first maybe give a round to our speakers. If you want a final comment throughout the different myths, or if you want, we go directly to the questions. I have them already prepared to bombard you a little bit. So I take the silence as we go directly to to the questions, I would invite the audience. We had been collecting your questions throughout the webinar. So please add them on, keep on adding them, and we will try to go to the most as we can. We still have half an hour to go, so we still have some time. Maybe we can also bring back, Nika, the cloud, where we saw health was so keen, sustainability. I think we touched many of those issues throughout the webinar. So maybe I go with the first question and let's see who feels brave enough. If not, I will challenge you directly. So one question that we have is that they say, if we say that organic is so profitable as we are presenting it right now, why is organic certified? Why is that most organic certified farmers per unit area are in Africa? Why is that Europeans haven't embraced it like Africans to make more money out of it? I would first state there that I'm not sure how that is measured because actually Europe shows the most consumption of organic per capita and also the most agricultural land converted into organic within their own agricultural land. But it's true that in Africa and in India especially, we have very smallholder farmers that are producing most of the food that we eat around the world. So I open the floor to our panelists. Volker, some thoughts? You have a lot of experience with those small farmers in Africa and trading and working with them.
Yes, we certainly do. Thank you, Julianne. Thank you for the question. I can think of three reasons, but I would also be interested to hear Harun's view on this. One of the reasons is certainly lack of transparency. People have no idea how we are actually undermining our ability to be profitable in future. So exploitation rides on the back of anonymity, and supply chains are usually anonymous, so we have no idea what the impact is on our health. A second reason is that we operate in an economy where we seem to be like junkies who are addicted to short-term profit, ignoring long-term externalities. And this is a systemic issue that is difficult to tackle. But it's happening with climate stress tests and biodiversity stress tests, but that only shows up in the last few years. So support and tailwind for true cost accounting, for de-risking supply chains, attention provided by the Eat Lancet report, The Planetary Boundaries to Social Foundations by Kate Raworth, help to build awareness. And finally, the argument I can think of is that if you detox the agriculture from heavy inputs such as mineral fertilizers, pesticide providers, and animal feed suppliers, then these input providers probably risk to see their business model evaporate. So that's where the money is made. That money is made over the backs of farmers and consumers. That money is made by parasitizing on people and planet, basically. So that's money is spent into scientific research, which is so the scientific research agenda disproportionately goes to conventional farming. So organic runs behind. And thanks to the groundbreaking work by institutes like FiBL, but also Rodale and others, but we need more research to back this up. And that's happening right now. So these are serious obstacles that keep us hijacked in the old economy that reaps a short-term profit at the expense of long-term productivity and profitability. That's the sort of reasons I can spontaneously come up with.
Thank you, Volker, because you brought a very important issue that is how the organic movement keeps on innovating, keeps on moving without the conventional resources. We don't have the lobby corporations. We don't have what the big agri industry has to promote their science, their statements, whatever. And look what we have done with the little resources, because what we have is what Julitza said. We have passion, we have commitment, we truly believe on this. So when we do it and we find the resources, whatever, and maybe it's more human resources, human capacities and passion that trucks all this. But we need to take that turn around. No, we need to bring awareness. Volker, go ahead.
Well, a final remark on this, and Harun already brilliantly elaborated on this. You can apply true cost accounting, and you can argue about the lack of scientific research, and you can talk about lobby, etc. But sooner or later, the boomerang of our short-term driven results will hit us. And that's happening right now. This so-called intensive farming that could feed the world because of yields is collapsing. That statement can no longer be made, and Harun's statistics clearly demonstrated this. And not just Harun's statement, because this is backed up by all the banks and financial institutions who argue that 55% of our global GDP is nature risk exposed, and 80% of our credits is nature risk exposed. So we are bound to see this back in supply chains collapsing as a result of it. So tailwind for organic farming principles is building up, and that can be very encouraging.
Thank you, Volker. Yeah, I think you touch a very important part. And Harun, you want to chip in?
If I chip in, I'm going to be, destroying the beautiful argument of Volkert.
You will become too technical.
Exactly, yeah. So I think Volkert really elaborated very nicely. And I'm not really actually also sure about the question, if it's the right question. The question is really a bit weird. So I don't want to, speculate on it, because question is not really framed maybe very clearly.
But we are also opening the discussion a little bit. It's bringing other issues into the table as well. We bring questions also to maybe brings other questions and other thoughts offline. And Julitza, any thoughts on this? You see also that we have a lot of smallholder farming especially in the Caribbean. It's mainly smallholders, shorter value chains. Now you see mainly non-certified, as you just mentioned before as well, but actually doing the good job, maybe selling in small farmers markets with more awareness consumers, because those closer connections in the value chain brings a lot of impact, no?
Yes. No, I think that Volker just explained it really beautifully, as they said. I really like the term detox agriculture. And it's one thing I want to say, it's that I've seen a progress in the conventional sector, which the government kind of, at least in the US, the government runs by the conventional sector. But like 20 years ago, there was no way you could get farm insurance with crops grown, as Harun was saying, with shrubs between grains and other stuff. And now that's changing. So I've seen, like, I would say, like, the last 7-8 years, I've seen constant progress of organic agriculture, and I'm sure we are going to succeed. And just like that boomerang, hopefully it's not going to affect whole humanity.
It will. And we need these kind of shocks to wake up.
Unfortunately, it seems, yeah.
So I welcome more crises.
But in a sustainable way. Crisis that we learn, because not crises where we don't learn. We want crises where we learn. So we take out.
But we also need crises to divert the attention from the simulated crisis in Greenland, Ukraine, etc., and idiots in the United States, there's an overarching crisis that is looming at the horizon, which is called environmental collapse. And so
Exactly.
we need to speed up that a little bit of sort of selective collapses to make ourselves aware that there's more important stuff to tackle globally as mankind than local ridiculous wars.
Definitely. And we are more afraid of these crazy wars than the actual war that we are facing, that is climate emergency. Now in Argentina, in
Precisely.
Patagonia, where I partly live, is all burned with wildfires. On the other
No,
side is full drought. On the other side is all flooded, all in one country at the same time of the year. So we are seeing it, and it's something that we can't keep on hiding behind our hands. But still, how we take it to the higher levels, to these crazy people that make the bigger decisions. And sometimes maybe the bigger impact comes in those bio districts that are coming up, these shorter communities making ground changes. And maybe there's a question that came to you, Julitza, that I would like to raise, because I think it also comes on the marketing ploy, on the really feeding the world. That is, does the high prices of organic products reflect the real production cost, or is mainly driven the market? And there, I think you could have different answers, because one thing will be the global trade, another thing will be local markets in more developed countries or less developed countries, supermarkets or farmers markets. I think you will have different answers, but go
yeah.
ahead.
I think it's a very complex question because for most staple foods, there is like a limit people are willing to pay. Like and now with environmental changes, especially here, we are seeing a lot of, it's like the nature clock got crazy. So now we're seeing like a lot of crops just growing out of season. So what does that mean? It means that more pests are coming in, and then you have this issue of let's say an avocado tree. It usually produces 200 avocados. This year it flowered 3 times, which is very unusual, and I got 10 avocados. So in normal math, capitalist structure, I would say, well, if there is a high demand on avocados and I only have 10 avocados, I'll sell them for $20 each avocado. And whoever can pay, they pay. In reality, people they have limits on their economic. So saying that a farmer can cover the production cost, it's very complex right now. And if that gives the price of the food, it's also very complex. So I would say that farmers that are part of farmers organizations like INOFO or like local organizations that are part of communities that are structured, they can handle the production costs without problems. But it's not something that you can only do with math. It's something that takes a broader accountability, and it's very hard to measure it because it gets really, really complex. Like for like the example of the avocados is something that's happening in almost every crop, and then how do you measure that so that at the end of the day the farmer needs support? And if the governments are not ready to support organic and sustainable farming, then it gets more difficult because a lot of farmers are just going to say, okay, I'm done. I'll go and, I don't know, sell cell phone covers at any market and just leave the farm. So I think governments and at first, farmer organizations, we need to be very aware and supportive of our members. So just to make sure that they are good and they are able to produce good and they have the support, whatever that means. and then governments need to work fast. And I think it's with the pressure of organizations that they're going to have to do that.
Thank you, Julitza. And before I give the floor to Harun that he wants to pitch in, I wanted, because you brought something that is very important. I think cost is not covered in any production system. Any producer really covers its cost. Sometimes it's covered by subsidies, so it's a hidden aid. But in organic, there is more a tendency of more covering the cost, especially in smaller value chains rather than in bigger value chains. There is a tendency on that, to give a summary a little bit to the audience, but still is an issue within the movement because, as Volker said, we are still playing in a bigger game with bigger rules that sometimes impact even if we try to set a different system and a different way of trading, of relating, of producing, etc. Right? Harun, you want to pitch in?
Yeah, I just want to say, we need to really be aware that we're not really playing, producing in a plain, fair, production field, right? Like the food prices are low, not because, there's a lot of food production, because, there are policies and, support from different governments and the fossil fuels. There are a lot of things, but like people should know, especially those who do not live in Europe, that European farmers are able to survive not because they produce excellent crops and excellent production levels, because government helps them, right? So it's very important to understand that the food prices are artificially low, right? It should not be this low. And again, food prices are not low because of the high production of conventional. That's not the case. So because this is always put together. This is really important to understand that. Food prices, again, I'm going to repeat it. Food prices are not low because of the high production of conventional system, because this is the biggest fallacy, right? Once people understand that, this really, you start understanding what's going on. So in Europe, the farmers, or in Europe, United States, Canada, whether directly or indirectly, there are subsidies, right? Government subsidies. So farmers mainly survive or make money because of these government subsidies. It can go up to 70% of their income. 70%. This is really crazy amount, right? So what this means is that it's very unfair to say, oh, the small farmers and organic farmers should go, optimize their production and innovate and, systematize and make money. You cannot, because the prices are artificially low, kept low purposefully, to basically suppress smallholders and suppress these developing countries, right? So, and as the consumers, maybe a lot of consumers are attending today, we need to really internalize the fact that food should be more expensive. Conventional or organic, doesn't matter. We should be ready to spend more money on food. This is really important. And then not expect that food should be cheap. So this is something I just wanted to mention, yeah.
I love that you brought that up, Harun, because this concept that food should be free or cheap, but we are willing to spend thousands of euros on a phone, on a handbag, on a new car, but we are not willing to spend money on food. And what we need to live in this planet is clean food, clean air, a healthy social environment, and we have none of them. And we expect that to come for free, and then we are willing to pay for things we don't actually need. So I think that you brought that issue of the cheapness of food and bringing back the value of food and the efforts that are behind that, all the people, the soil, the ecosystem services that are behind it, the biodiversity, etc., they are never accounted. Volker, you have some thoughts on this? Or I jump to the last question.
Well, just a small remark. I fully endorse what Harun just said. We operate in an unlevel playing field in the market where the polluter gets away with a competitive advantage. That's why stuff is cheap, because not all costs are accounted for. That's why stuff is cheap. And if the polluter would pay and a good tax system, so this is also a fiscal challenge, would penalize the polluter and support the one who contributes to environmental or social value. if that would be the case, then organic would be a lot cheaper and conventional would be a lot more expensive. So it's all about proportions, and there are nice initiatives, for instance, led by female leaders who experiment with the X-tax model, the extracted value tax. So rather than taxing added value, you tax extracted value. So behind the screens, you find coalitions of the willing who experiment with tomorrow's tax schemes that provide a more level playing field from which sustainability and organic farmers included will benefit.
Thank you, Volker. Yes, I think it's crucial, this of being aware where we are, how things are being measured, how things are being communicated. It's a base of many of the issues and challenges we face as well. And to close, we still have 10 minutes, but I want to close with this, give ourselves 5 minutes to answer this final question, and then 5 minutes for reflection and saying goodbye to our audience. And it's a very tricky one, but there's a member in our audience that says that people are dying of hunger in some parts of Africa. So there is a need to food to reach them. And as Harun well stated, there is enough food. The issue is rather on how we distribute that food. And as Julitza said, is what kind of food are we looking for and what kind of food are we producing? So what kind of diet we are supporting? So any thoughts on that? I think it's a very pressing issue that stress our hearts because it's unfairness and people are suffering. And we know that it is not because of lack of tons of food, it's other issues. So maybe I give you the floor. Who is brave enough to start? If not, Julitza, go ahead. Yeah.
Yes. I just want to say about that. I remember the first time I went to an international meeting, and I had that idea in my mind that there were a lot of people dying of hunger. And then I go to these meetings and I'm like, wow, there is enough food for all the world. There is. But then you go to first world countries, and freedom in those first world countries means you have 7 different brands of broccoli. That's the freedom. So, and then you have other places that just don't have anything. They're barely fighting to survive. So I really think it's an economic model failure, what we are living. There is no person that should go hungry right now. I know of different projects in Africa that are changing that with regenerative agriculture models, and most of them are coming from places in Europe, which is very beautiful to see. And I'm sure, I really hope, I'm not sure, but I really hope that humanity just changes the way they are living. Because every time you consume more than you need, you're taking resources out of people that need it. Every time you use your money to buy something extra that you just like, you can just like donate that money to people that actually need it. So that's all I want to add.
Yeah, in that way, you're saying with each purchase, you are supporting a system. So you need to be aware of which system you are supporting. So if you're buying organic, you're supporting a different value chain, a different conception of the market, of human relationships, of fairness. Harun, Volker, any thoughts? Harun, go ahead.
Yeah, okay.
Harun first.
Yeah, I'm gonna just give an example, actually, a very specific example how this can happen. I mean, we know that wars and other exploitative interventions by other countries can cause this, but one thing to discuss is basically this systemic intentional policies to deprive people of their own productive ability in the countries. Like West Africa is a very interesting example. Around 5 years ago, Deutsche Welle, this channel that made a documentary, very nice documentary, actually. I was very surprised to see that, that actually clearly showed, they did an investigation, clearly showed how European dumping of products into into West Africa, particularly Senegal in this case, actually destroyed the local agricultural market, right? And they took on specific commodities like wheat, the milk products from France, right? Wheat from Europe in general, right? And they actually talked to politicians, producers. So for example, wheat doesn't grow in West Africa. It doesn't exist ecologically. And wheat per kilogram is cheaper than local grains like millet and sorghum. Okay, so this does not make sense, right? And this is a deliberate policy to deprive the people of their productive potential, right? So, and this thing came out, and I was very surprised to see it again, because these policies are always secret. The imperialists do this in a very subtle way, right? And I was attending another EU conference with some EU politicians from Brussels, and then this topic was subtly touched upon, and I asked this question. I said, why European Union is actually dumping and then influencing local food systems in these such countries, like the specific example of West Africa. And then the person, the MP, member of Parliament or European Parliament, he got very upset. Actually, it was a big conference, and he said these are slanders and lies and everything, right? And I said, no, we have evidence. Look, Deutsche Welle, you can trust it. There's this document, and then we went to Deutsche Welle's thing to send them the link, and then this documentary was removed from it doesn't exist anymore, right? So it's very interesting case. These policies, we know in general how this happens, why people are hungry because of instability, because of dictators appointed by the imperialists and all that stuff. But there is also normal looking countries under the huge pressure from the imperialists, basically, to destroy their food system, right? And these are not very visible. You need to really investigate to realize these things, right? So it's not very simple way of, they are resource poor farmers, they don't have resources. Not the case, no.
And it has 400 years history, this.
Exactly.
It's not now.
Exactly. Yeah. So these markets are purposefully destroyed. Production capacity is purposefully destroyed, right? So and then of course, you go to breakfast, for example, in Mali or Burkina Faso and in West Africa, in a remote place, in a very small hotel. What you eat is coffee from the Switzerland, not from Switzerland, but processed in Switzerland, cheese and milk powder from France, jam from Spain.
No,
I'm
from
not
Holland.
Holland, okay. And then the bread again, European wheat. I don't know which country, but and I took a picture of this so many times. It's not marginal thing. So you don't find local food in a very lush environment even, right? So it's very interesting. Like people should see this. This is really something that to take note of. Yeah.
Yeah, they have been deprived of their own culture and food system and heritage in a way, and this is, and we are seeing the price. Volker.
Well, Harun, you must admit one can get a spontaneous depression from all of this, but change has never come.
I'm still smiling.
Yeah, no, you are, and I appreciate you for that. And this is not why you're saying it, I also know. But I just want to encourage all of us by saying change has never come, and leadership has never come from a following majority that parasitizes on people and planet. Change has always come and will always come from a trend-setting minority. So get used to the idea that 80% of your immediate social environment is probably helpless and has no idea where to begin. Whether you're a farmer, consumer, an entrepreneur, a scientist, but it's the 20% that do respond to your ideals and dreams with whom you can cooperate. And from there you can scale, because we need these coalitions of the willing. We need to deploy the entire orchestra in which every voice counts, whether it's a scientist, a trader, Extinction Rebellion, a consumer. This is the orchestra behind coalitions of the willing. We need to form coalitions of the willing who say, if the going gets tough, the tough get going. And where there's a will, there's a detour. And again, we need these coalitions of the willing to prototype food and farming systems that can future-proof our world. And we need prototypes that can be deployed once the shit hits the fan, and the shit will hit the fan.
Thank you, Volker. I think with that, we are closing. We have 1 minute left, and you summarized the whole thing in a perfect way. So I want to thank you all. We have wonderful speakers. Again, to the audience, everything has been recorded and will be online. We invite you to share it as well. The presentations will be. I want to really thank you for bearing with us this hour and a half. All the webinars are also available, the previous ones, on our website and on YouTube. And next month is coming BioFach in Nuremberg, the largest trade organic fair. And we have a congress there. We invite you also to visit us at our booth, showing our sessions. This year, the focus is on youth. So we have very interesting sessions. Also, India is the country of the year, so there will be good food. So thank you again to these wonderful speakers. I think we debunked many more myths than expected, because some came throughout the discussion. So I want to thank you again. If you want one last word before we close up, a message for the audience on organic, what will be your word to the cloud word on organics? What it means for you? Maybe I go, Julitza. One word, what means organic for you?
My life? I don't know.
Life. That's beautiful. Beautiful. Harun?
Humanity. Like it. Yeah.
Well, that's a very heartfelt all.
Yeah.
And Volker, in one
Well,
word?
in one word, a big thank you to IFOAM and you, Julia.
Oh, thank you. And yes, please keep on following IFOAM. We try to bring the clarity to the world. Keep on fighting for organic. And thank you all for making the time. Thank you for bringing your expertise, your charisma, and your wisdom. Thank you very much, and see you at the next webinar. Thank you all the team at IFOAM for supporting us. They are hidden, but they are there doing great work.
Thank you. Great job.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.